Good evening, friends, and welcome to Sleepy Time Tales, a podcast aimed at helping you to get a good night's sleep. This is a podcast where I read old books, sometimes fiction, sometimes non-fiction, in the most boring way I can, to try and help slow your spinning mind, enough for you to fall asleep in the most natural way possible. The stresses of life often follow us to bed and keep us company, but I'm here to distract you from them and help you drift away. Before you do fall asleep, if you find Sleepy Time Tales helpful and would like to support me to keep it going out to you and thousands of your fellow insomniacs, please consider signing up on the Patreon at patreon.com/sleepytimetales. If monthly is a bit much, you can put a tip in the Ko-Fi tip jar. Both of these are linked in the show notes. Or you can support Sleepy Time Tales by simply spreading the word. If you know someone struggling to sleep, just tell them where to find it. So that's enough of that. It's time to continue learning about female composers, mostly of the 19th century, starting off in America. So snuggle down, close your eyes, breathe deeply, and listen closely as I lead you down the path to sleep. We return this week to Women's Work in Music by Arthur Elson. Clara Kathleen Barnett, now Mrs. Rogers, is also a resident of Boston. Born in England, she received her earliest musical education from her parents. They were of a talented family, for her grandfather was the famous songwriter Robert Linley. In 1856, she was sent to the Leipzig Conservatory, studying piano with Michel, ensemble playing with David and Reitz, and harmony with Richter. Her singing, by which she first became famous, was begun with Goethe and finished at Berlin under Frau Zimmermann. Under the name of Clara Doria, she appeared with success in many Italian cities, and finally came to America, where she married and settled in Boston. Her present work consists of teaching and composing. In the former field, her book, The Philosophy of Singing, contains much new and valuable material. Among her compositions is first of all a string quartet of excellent workmanship. There are also sonatas for violin and for cello, with piano, and a piano scherzo. Her songs are many in number and excellent in quality. Among them are 2 sets of Browning songs, 6 folk songs, and such favorites as The Rose and the Lily, Clover Blossoms, Confession, At Break of Day, and many others. In the front rank of American pianists is Julia Revay King. A native of Cincinnati, she began her musical education under William Mason and S.B. Mills, finishing abroad with Reinecke and Liszt. At her debut in Leipzig, she scored a great success, and since then has been steadily before the public. Her compositions are mostly for piano, including some excellent Liszt and Scarlatti transcriptions. Among her own works are Polonaise Heroique, Polka Caprice, Gems of Scotland, and many other popular numbers. Another pianist well known to American audiences is Madame Helene Hopkirk Wilson. Although her birthplace and home are in England, she has spent so much time in this country that she may well be regarded as belonging to it. She too was a pupil of the Leipzig Conservatory, finishing with Leschetizky and making a successful debut in the Leipzig Gewandhaus Orchestra in 1878. She has shown ability in the larger forms, her own concerto being produced in a Henschel concert at Edinburgh. She has several orchestral works still in manuscript, as well as a violin sonata. Her many songs and piano works make her list as long as it is honorable. Several of the younger American women are beginning to make efforts in orchestral work. Clara Korn, a pupil of Bruno Klein, is responsible for 2 suites for orchestra, as well as 1 for violin, and various piano pieces and songs. Grace Markwald has also tried her hand in the larger forms. Edna Rosalind Park, a native of Boston, now residing in New York, has shown decided talent in the songs she has published, and has several important works in manuscript. Margaret Williams, a Baltimore student who was born in Tennessee, produced a concert overture at one of the Peabody Symphony concerts, and has also composed the words and music for a 5-act opera entitled Columbus. Eliza Woods, another student at the same place, has written a full manuscript score for an overture, as well as a double fugue, a sonata, and a number of songs. Edith Noyes Porter of Boston is also at work on some extensive compositions, her published works to date being chiefly songs. In the operatic field, Emma Steiner stands at the head. Born at Baltimore, she showed a taste for music at an early age, and was able to read and write notes when only 7. Her parents objected to a musical career for her, but she continued her practice and earned money for further study by writing waltzes and other popular dance music. She became proficient in making orchestral arrangements and has been eminently successful as a leader of many large New York organizations. Among her operettas are The Alchemist, also a version of the old French romance Fleurette, and an adaptation from Tennyson called Daydreams. She is also the author of many songs. Lily Mahon Siegfried of Buffalo has also produced an operetta, besides the song The Beautiful Land of Nod, and several other songs and lullabies. Miss Estabrook has over 40 songs to her credit, besides the operetta, The Tournament. Mrs. John Orth has composed a children's operetta, also a number of simple songs and piano works for beginners. Laura Sedgwick Collins, who has already won a high rank, wrote the music to Pierrot, besides many excellent songs and violin works. In chamber music, Marguerite Melville has produced some worthy works. Among them is a remarkably good piano quintet, while she has also written a sonata and a romanza for violin and piano, besides several beautiful songs. Alicia Van Buren, also author of a number of worthy songs, has published a string quartet with Breitkopf and Hartel. Alice Locke Pittman, now Mrs. Weasley, has written several violin works, besides a number of songs. Mary Knightwood, another gifted member of the new generation, studied with Arthur the Foot and B.J. Lang. She has already produced a piano trio, and her songs such as Ashes of Roses, Heartsease, Autumn, and so forth, are imbued with the most exquisite refinement. Marie von Hammer and Laura Danziger have written pieces for the cello, the latter supplementing this work by a number of piano compositions. Organ music is well represented by the work of Helen Joseph Andreas of Poughkeepsie. She is a graduate of Vassar, where she won a degree by her musical studies. Her compositions include several organ pieces and a cantata for organ and strings, also anthems and various church music, as well as piano works and songs. Clara Rees is another organist who has produced a number of compositions. Lucina Jewell, a New England Conservatory graduate, is the author of an introduction and fugue for organ, besides some effective songs and other works. Faustina Hasser Hodges was another able organist who wrote church music. Helen Hood is one of America's few really gifted musical women. Boston has been her home and the scene of her chief work, although she has traveled abroad and studied for 2 years with Moskowski. Endowed with absolute pitch, she has composed from her earliest years, and her music won for her a medal and diploma at the Chicago Exposition. Her most important work is a piano trio, while her 2 violin suites are also made of excellent material. Mrs. Jessie L. Gaynor has won an enviable position for herself, chiefly as a composer of children's songs. Her work is marked by bright and pleasing rhythms, excellent discretion in the proper choice of harmony, and a fluent ease that makes her productions unusually singable. It is not given to many composers to be able to make any real appeal to younger hearers, but Mrs. Gaynor is possessed of the sympathetic insight that enables her to win the utmost popularity with them. Her work is not confined to this vein, but includes some more ambitious songs for older performers, and even vocal quartets. Eleanor Smith is another songwriter who believes that children should be given the best of music, and not allowed to listen wholly to the popular ragtime tunes of the day. Her position as music teacher in the Cook County Normal School has enabled her to put her ideas in practice, and her songs for boys are delightful bits of worthy music. She too has done more ambitious work, such as a Rossetti Christmas Carol, the contralto solo The Quest, 8 settings of Stevenson's poems, the wedding music for 8 voices, piano and organ, and the cantata, The Golden Asp. Mrs. C. Merrick, who publishes her works over the name of Edgar Thorne, is another talented woman who displays great gifts in small forms. Her amourette for piano has often figured on concert programs. In her 2 collections, Forgotten Fairy Tales and 6 Fancies, many of the numbers show a rare imaginative charm. The same composer has produced several effective male choruses, which have been sung by the Mendelssohn Glee Club and other organizations. Among other songwriters, Mildred Hill of Louisville has been able to preserve the real Southern flavor in some of her works, a result that is seldom attained, in spite of the countless efforts in this direction. She too has insisted in putting good music into her children's songs. Mrs. Philip Hale, a resident of Boston, has produced a number of songs and piano works, the latter under the pseudonym of Victor René. Stella Prince Stocker is another well-known songwriter. Mrs. Theodore Sutro, a pupil of Dudley Buck, has also composed songs, besides piano works and a 4-voiced fugue. Louise Tunison is another song composer well worthy of mention, while Adeline Train has produced some solos of remarkable delicacy. Helen Tretbar, famous as a writer and translator of musical works, has tried her hand at songs also. Another literary song composer is Fanny Raymond Ritter. A prominent figure in the musical world today is Josephine Grow, who writes songs and piano pieces, and is the author of many popular dances. Chapter 10. Other Countries. Although not as prolific of women composers as its musical reputation might indicate, Italy has still produced some famous names. The women of earlier schools of contrapuntal music have already been mentioned. Francesca Caccini was an exponent of the first growth of opera. After her comes a gap, and we find no women at work during the time of Scarlatti, for example, and few in the era when the early conventional opera saw its palmy days in the hands of Cimarosa and his compeers. A number flourished at the beginning of the 19th century, and now that Italy is experiencing a musical regeneration, the women are still present in the field. One of the foremost of them today is the Countess Gilda Ruta. She was born at Naples and was the daughter of a musician of some note. In fact, he became one of her best teachers. Among others with whom she studied was the opera composer Mercadante, whose long career extended well into the last century. She became a pianist of great renown, but won her laurels more in the field of composition. Her opera, The Fire Worshippers, is a worthy example of its school. Her orchestral ability showed itself also in the form of a concerto for piano, while among her other works are a number of songs and a good deal of instrumental music. Eva Dell'Acqua is another Italian woman who has won a high position by her works. She did not inherit the taste directly, for her father was not a musician but a painter. He has made Brussels his home, and there his talented daughter has brought forth her compositions. Her songs are widely known and show sterling merit. In more ambitious vein is her operetta La Bachelette, which was given with unusual success in the Brussels theatres. Another work for the stage is the comic opera Tambour Battant. Carlotta Ferrari is undoubtedly the greatest of the Italian women composers. Born at Lodi in 1837, she soon began her musical studies, completing them with the best masters of the Milan Conservatory. When she tried to enter the lists in dramatic work, she found the theatre managers unwilling to give her any encouragement because of her sex. Feeling sure of her ability, however, she was brave enough to hire a theatre and produce her opera Hugo at her own expense. The result justified her hopes, for the work scored an entire success. Since that time, she has had no trouble in dealing with the managers, who may well feel ashamed of their early fears. Her later operas, Sophia and Eleonora da Arboria, were as warmly received as her first attempt. Her work is by no means limited to the stage. She has produced an excellent mass, which was written for the cathedral of her native town. The impression made by this work was so favorable that she received 2 commissions from the Turin authorities at later times, one for a requiem and the other for a cantata. She is said to be an absolute master of canon, with the imitation of one part by another. Among her smaller works are 2 sets of these canons for 3 voices and piano. One of the earlier composers was Maria Teresa Agnesi, who flourished in the 18th century. Like many of her sex, she was a pianist as well as a composer. She worked in the larger forms, and her 4 operas met with decided success in many cities of her operatic land. Besides operas, she produced several cantatas and other choral works, and a number of concertos, sonatas, and pieces for the piano. Another 18th century celebrity was Maddalena Sermon, who won fame as one of the great Italian school of violinists. She was a pupil of the renowned Tartini and held her own with the great performers of her time. Her works contain a number of violin concertos and a set of 6 trios for 2 violins and a cello, besides many smaller pieces. Many of these were wholly successful in performance. Maria Andreozzi, Marquise de Bottini, lived in the early part of the 19th century. Her works all show great merit and cover a wide range in the matter of form. They include an opera, a requiem, a Stabat Mater, an orchestral Magnificat, the cantata Saint Cecile, another choral cantata, a number of concertos for piano, several overtures, and various compositions for voice, harp, and piano. It is only natural to find opera the most popular form for ambitious Italian composers to use in striving for public favor. Where each little town and village had its own opera house, there was an opportunity for the public to become accustomed to this form, while other works stood less chance of production and brought less revenue to the composer. As early as 1764, we find the ballet music to the opera Dario, published by Signora Bartolotti. In the next century, Ursula Asperi leads in Point of Time, her first opera having been given in 1827. She was conductor for a year at one of the Florentine theatres and filled the post with admirable skill. Carolina Uccelli produced Saul in 1830, following it up with Emma de Resburgo. Teresa Seneca obtained a Roman hearing for her opera Les Deux Amici, and published also a quantity of songs and piano music. Adolfo Galloni composed the opera La Quattro Rustici, besides instrumental and vocal music. Signora Casella was another operatic composer, her Cristoforo Colombo having been produced at Nice in 1865. Teresa Guidi is the author of numerous operas of our own day, while the Countess Ida Corra of Padua has witnessed frequent performances of her Gondoliera. Of the many women working in the smaller forms, Virginia Mariani has won prominence at present, not only by her songs and piano music, but by her cantata, The Apotheosis of Rossini. Teresa Milanolo, a celebrated violinist of the past century, published a number of compositions for her instrument, besides various works for piano. Among other piano composers in Italy during the 19th century may be mentioned Teresa de Blasis, Natalie Bertini, Eugenia Appiani, Bertha Frugioni, Clary Zentner, and Adele Branca Mussini. Ernestina Ricotti has tried her hand at songs, as well as publishing piano works. Teresa Bertinotti, herself a famous singer, was the composer of many popular songs and arias. Angelica Catalani was another example of the combination of singer and composer, while Marietta Brambilla added teaching to her other accomplishments. Maria Rosa Cuccia was a celebrity of the preceding century, and won great fame by her youthful accomplishments in counterpoint, besides composing much church music. Mariana Kreesti gained her renown as a player on the harp and composer for that instrument. The Netherlands also had its quota of musical women. In the early part of the last century, Mademoiselle Bro, a native of Amsterdam, won an enviable position as a pianist and composed a number of pieces for her instrument, including dances, rondos, and variations. In the next generation, Madeleine Graver, of the same place, pursued a similar career. She made many successful tours in the usual European countries and spent a year in New York at the beginning of the Civil War. On her return from this country, she became court pianist to the Queen of Belgium. Her works include several display pieces for piano. The Baroness van der Lunt has also published a number of piano works. Among the contemporary composers, one of the best is Catherine van Rijn. Her work consists chiefly of songs, a form in which she is eminently successful. Among those she has published are a set of 5 two-part songs, entitled Lenteterve, a collection of 6 two-part songs for children, and a set of solos for the same performers, under the title of Young Holland. She shows a mastery of style and an ability to get just the effect that she wishes. Her works are attractive and singable without ever becoming overswollen or bombastic. Cornelia van Oosterzee has won her way to the highest position by her work in the larger forms. Among her best productions are 2 symphonic poems from the Idyls of the King, entitled Elaine's Death and Geraint's Bridal Journey. These were performed with great success at one of the recent Berlin Philharmonic concerts. Her cantatas show unusual breadth of style, and their largeness of spirit wins them great favor. Mademoiselle Oosterzee has been honored for her work by receiving the decoration of the Order of the Orange Nassau. Heinrike van Tussenbroek is another composer who devotes herself chiefly to songs. Like Mademoiselle van Rijn, she is a native of Utrecht. Her works include many songs and vocal duets, of which Meedoen, a collection of children's songs, deserves a special attention. She wrote the words and music for a child's operetta, 3 Little Lute Players, which was performed 3 times and aroused much enthusiasm. In Belgium, the Countess de Lannoy won her laurels in the 18th century. Her work took the form of ballads and romances, and she wrote also a sonata and a number of other instrumental pieces. Among the Belgian musical women of today, Juliette Fulville stands in the front rank. Born as late as 1870 at Liège, she became an excellent violinist as well as composer, and in all probability has a long career still before her. Most important among her works is a set of several orchestral suites, while a violin concerto and other pieces are more in line with her efforts as a performer. Her opera Atala met with considerable success when given at Lille in 1892. In Denmark, Emma Dahl flourished as a singer and composer during the middle of the last century, and published many melodious songs in her own and the Scandinavian countries. Valborg Orlin is a more recent writer of songs, of which she has issued a respectable number. Her choral work is of excellent quality and has enabled her to carry off more than one prize in musical competitions. Harriet Kuman of Copenhagen is an excellent pianist, being reckoned as one of the greatest performers of the present. Her works consist chiefly of pieces for her instrument. Sophie Didekam is a composer of songs, of which several sets have been published. Elizabeth Meyer is another successful songwriter. She does not confine herself to this form, however, but has produced many piano works. Her cantata for soloists, chorus, and piano won a first prize in a recent Danish competition. Sweden can boast of several women composers, of whom at least two are really famous. Among those working in the smaller forms is Kaja Arup, now residing in America. She is the author of a number of pleasing songs and piano compositions. Amanda Meyer, known also under her married name of Rontgen, has composed many worthy pieces for the violin, among them being a sonata and an interesting set of Swedish dances. Another violin composer is Miss Largo, who has published songs and piano pieces, as well as violin works, and has won a prize at Copenhagen with a piano cantata. Helen Monktel has produced songs and piano pieces, and has entered another field with her one-act opera in Florence. Hilda Thegestrom is responsible for some very melodious songs and piano pieces, published in Germany as well as in her native land. One of Sweden's most gifted women is Elfrida Andrea. Born in 1841, she soon devoted herself to musical studies and took up the career of organist, so often a thankless one. She plays at present in the cathedral at Gothenburg. Her works include many different forms, even the symphonic. Her organ symphony is especially noteworthy, and all her orchestral works show decided talent. Her orchestral cantata Siegfried is another effective composition. For chamber music, she has written a quintet for piano, 2 violins, viola, and cello. Also another quintet for strings that won a prize in competition. At a recent Brussels Musical Congress, she took first prize among no less than 78 competitors. She is the author of many smaller works for organ, voice, and piano. In Ingeborg von Bronsart is found one of the few really great women composers. Born at St. Petersburg in 1840, she is classed as Swedish because her parents were not citizens of Russia, but remained subjects of Sweden. Her mother was a Finn, but her father's native place was Stockholm. Ingeborg's earliest musical impressions came from the violin playing of her mother, done wholly by ear from her father's flute playing, and from the singing of the touching Swedish folk songs by the housekeeper. When her elder sister began regular study, Ingeborg was considered too young for it, but begged so hard that she was allowed to take lessons too. At the very first one, the teacher noticed her great talent, and in a few months she was far in advance of her sister. A year later, at the age of 8, Ingeborg began to compose little melodies and dances, and her father was moved to seek a good master for her. He made a fortunate choice in the famous amateur Nicholas von Martenhof, for Ingeborg became not only his pupil, but a welcome guest at the house of his family. With them she was able to hear the best of the operas and other music afforded by the imperial city, and the summers passed by her at their estate, enabled to grow strong by riding, swimming, and other outdoor exercise. When 11 years old, Ingeborg began harmony with the composer Decca. She progressed quickly, and in her first concert, given a year later, was able to present creditable work of her own. Her success was decisive, and critics and public united in foretelling her great future. From that time on, she gave annual concerts with orchestra, meeting growing favor. Meanwhile, her composition was not neglected, beginning by publishing 3 etudes, a tarantelle, and a nocturne for piano. She continued with sonatas, fugues, and songs. She won the interest of the musical circles, including Rubinstein, and through von Martinov she became the pet of the Russian aristocracy. When that protector was called away by the Crimean War, he left her in the care of Adolf Henselt, and after 2 years with a new master, she was sent by him to finish her studies under Liszt, then long famous as leader of the gifted musical circle of Weimar. When she came to him, an 18-year-old girl endowed with all the fair beauty of her northern land, she gave him as proof of her proficiency some of her piano fugues. The experienced master rather doubted if the charming apparition before him could produce such intricate work as a fugue without receiving aid. So he gave her a new theme and requested her to write another fugue upon it. Nothing daunted, she started at once, and in a short while she handed him the manuscript. He played it through and acknowledged its merit with the remark, "Well, you don't look at all like it." Instantly came the reply, "I'm very glad I don't look like a fugue." Ingeborg became one of his few chosen favorites, and soon all Weimar worshipped her as St. Petersburg had done before. With Liszt she remained 2 years, devoting herself chiefly to piano and composing sonata only as a diversion. She speaks warmly in praise of the great tone poet's influence. His guidance, she says, prevented me from being one-sided in art, and the example of his wonderful nature taught me to seek and absorb the beautiful in music everywhere, no matter what school its composer belonged to. While under Liszt's care she appeared at court, and made successful debuts in Dresden, Paris, and the Leipzig Gewandhaus. Under Liszt also was Hans von Bronsart, who had known Ingeborg in St. Petersburg, and who was now fortunate enough to win her love and become her husband. The next few years were devoted to performing, and numerous tours brought equally numerous triumphs. Composition was not neglected, and a piano concerto of fair success was the result of this period. At this time her dramatic efforts began, and the 3-act opera Der Göttin von Sais was the first result. The music of this work was excellent, but the libretto lacked action, and no stage performance was ever given. Composing soon became her life work, for her husband was appointed intendant of the Hanover Court Theatre, and wives of Prussian officials were forbidden to appear in public, except on special occasions. Her works began to multiply. German and Russian songs, piano pieces, and violin works followed one another in quick succession. The return of the troops from the Franco-Prussian War, with her husband as officer among them, brought forth 3 patriotic songs, 2 male choruses, and the Kaiser Wilhelm March for orchestra, performed at a court festival of rejoicing. Her second operatic attempt was a setting of Goethe's Jerry und Beatley, which met with deserved success. The music is of choice quality throughout, according to the criticism of Richard Pohl, and the dramatic climax is excellently worked up by the fact that each successive number is purposely made more effective than the one preceding it. The same power and beauty of expression shows itself in her later songs, written mostly for the poems of Bottenstedt. These are in many cases well able to stand the test of comparison with the best of German Lieder. A number of pieces for cello and piano are of equal value, as are also her violin works. Her last opera, Konning Heon, suffers again from a weak libretto, but is made of worthy musical material. It was rated as a successful work, but some of the wiser critics doubt if its power of melodic expression can wholly atone for the lack of certain essentially dramatic qualities. In 1887, the Hanover Post was exchanged for a similar one at Weimar. There her husband performed excellent service in keeping alive the traditions of Liszt and his followers. After 8 years, von Bronsart retired from public duty. A short period of travel followed, after which the musical pair settled down to a life of quiet at Munich. There too lives the daughter of the family, who is said to have inherited a full share of the musical ability shown by her parents. Among the composers of Norway, Madame Betty Holmberg has devoted herself to the violin, publishing an excellent suite and other compositions for it. Magda Berger, who has made America her home, is the author of many piano pieces and songs. The most famous Norwegian woman composer, however, is Agatha Bakker Grøndahl. Born in 1847, she received a thorough musical training, counting among her teachers Kjerulf, Kullak, von Bülow, and Liszt. Her work has won many honors, including the Royal Gold Medal of Sweden. Her compositions are not many in number, but all of them show the most delightful freshness and originality. Like her great fellow countryman Krieg, she aims to give her music a distinctive style of its own, and not make it a mere imitation of the usual modes. Her Andante for piano and orchestra, and her orchestral scherzo are excellent works, which meet with frequent performance, while her suite is another example of striking beauty. Her piano works, which include etudes, fantasies, sketches, and humoresques, are full of the same characteristic charm, while her songs display exquisite poetic feeling. And before we launch into Bohemia and Hungary, I think I'm going to call it there. As always, if you'd like to pick up where I'm leaving off, you can find the original on Project Gutenberg at the link in the show notes. Thanks again for joining me on this episode of Sleepy Time Tales, the podcast designed around a bedtime story to help you to get a restful night. New episodes will be released every Sunday night to give you something fresh to help you rest in a new week. But make sure to follow or subscribe in whatever service you use so that you get your new episodes whenever they come out. Good night and sweet dreams.